The life and mysterious death of Debra Jackson Orange Socks. A young woman seeking independence. Debra Louise Jackson was born in 1956 in Abilene, Texas. To those who knew her, she was kind, independent, and full of life. But like many young adults, she longed for something more, a fresh start, a new life beyond the small town where she had grown up. In 1977, at the age of 21, Debra left home. Her family didn't think much of it. Many young people set out on their own, and Debra was always determined. They assumed she was starting a new life, working and making her way in the world. Over the next 2 years, she moved between different jobs, staying in Texas but never in one place for too long. In 1978, she worked at a Ramada Inn in Amarillo, and later at the Vermont, an assisted living facility in Ozell. By 1979, it's believed she was working at a real estate office, but the details of her final months remain unclear. She was living life on her own terms. But sometime in late 1979, everything changed. The night she disappeared. On October 31st, 1979, Halloween night, a truck driver pulled over on Interstate 35, near Georgetown, Texas. As he stepped out, something caught his eye, a motionless figure lying in a culvert, just off the road. He called the authorities, and what they found left investigators disturbed. The woman was completely unclothed, except for a single striking details. She was wearing a pair of bright orange socks. There were no identification papers, no purse, no name. The autopsy later revealed that she had been strangled just hours before she was found, and there were signs she had been assaulted. With no missing person reports matching her description, the authorities had no way of knowing who she was. She became known only by the one thing she had left: her orange socks. A false confession. Henry Lee Lucas enters the case. Years passed. No leads, no name, no answers. Then, in 1983, a notorious serial killer in custody, Henry Lee Lucas, confessed to the crime. Lucas was a drifter with a violent past, arrested in 1983 for multiple murders. Once in custody, he began confessing to everything, hundreds of crimes across the country. Authorities were eager to close unsolved cases, and Lucas was more than willing to talk. In the case of Orange Socks, Lucas claimed he picked her up as a hitchhiker, before killing her and leaving her on the roadside. His confession matched some of the details, and he was convicted of her murder in 1984. But there was one big problem: Henry Lee Lucas was a liar. Investigators later found evidence that he had been in another state at the time of the murder, making it impossible for him to be the real culprit. His confession was false, just like many of the others. In 1998, then-Governor George W. Bush commuted his death sentence, citing the lack of evidence tying him to the crime. Once again, the case was back to square one. The DNA breakthrough, finding Debra's name? For nearly 40 years, Orange Socks remained a nameless victim. Then, in 2019, a breakthrough in forensic science changed everything. Using advanced DNA technology, the Jane Doe project worked with law enforcement to analyze genetic material from the victim. They traced her family tree, leading them to a family in Abilene, Texas. Investigators contacted the family, asking about a young woman who had been missing since the late 1970s. The family was shocked. They had believed Debra had simply moved on with her life. They never even knew she was missing. When they saw forensic sketches of Orange Socks, they knew. DNA tests confirmed it. After for decades, Orange Socks finally had her real name, Debra Louise Jackson. Still no justice. Even though Debra's identity was restored, her murder remains unsolved. Henry Lee Lucas was never the real killer, and with each passing year, the chances of finding the true culprit grow slimmer. Investigators are still searching for answers. They are piecing together the last months of her life, hoping anyone remembers something. Did she have new friends? Did she travel with anyone? Was there someone who took advantage of her trust? Debra Jackson was more than a case file. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with dreams. And even though it took 40 years to give her back her name, she still deserves justice. The search for her real killer is not over.